Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith has decided he is going to take a stand on a controversial issue, something that doesn't happen all that often. And he had some things to say about Cheryl Reeve and the t-shirt she decided to wear against the Indiana Fever, coincidentally against Sophie Cunningham after her recent comments came to light, which were made, by the way, all the way back in February when she was asked a specific question. She didn't just recently decide to make this an issue, coincidentally against the Indiana Fever, who, as we know, are the only team that draw in the WNBA. I believe it was 2.5 million viewers for that game against the Minnesota Lynx, which was the second highest rated game of the year. Or was it the second highest for the network? Either way, it was one of the top few, if I remember correctly. I think we might add one at like 2.6 something, maybe another one at 2.5 something that might have been slightly higher. But and I know I've gotten a lot of people, message me and ask, hey, people are doing all these videos on, what's been blowing up with Sophie Cunningham and this and that. You've kind of touched on it, but you haven't really mentioned it. One, I am not shying away from giving you my opinion, which I will do. I've done that on X as well. It's more, there's been so much stuff. I've been so busy. I could have done a 5-hour show on everything that's come fast and furious on this topic. And, flat out, reality is it's an iffy one for this particular platform that we are on. So fingers crossed on how this goes. But I thought what Stephen A. Smith said was interesting, and I wanted to break it down a little bit, give you my perspective as well. Because I also have something interesting that I want to share with you and talk about with Cheryl Reeve that makes you kind of maybe take a step back and not take anything she says at face value. Welcome back. Thank you for being here. Appreciate all of your support. Hope y'all are having a fantastic day. Of course, shout out to the 19. Quick favor, y'all know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe. Keep the channel going. Let's take a listen to what Stephen A. has to say.
This is not about being anti anything. This is about being pro girls, pro females, pro women, pro ladies. That's what this is about. You can't be.
That's better for you, hopefully.
A male, born a male, transitioning to female, and think that you should have the right to compete with women. Not in basketball, not in football, not in boxing, not in the UFC. Hell, not even in tennis. It's an aberration when you find somebody like a Serena Williams serving 120 miles, 25 miles an hour. That's ordinary for Jokic or Jokovic. That's ordinary for Sinner. That's ordinary for Alcaraz. That was ordinary for Sampras, Agassi, and all of these guys.
Yeah, man, I just want to point out, it's kind of wild how issues in the culture and where they are in a given moment, how that can change people so dramatically, those in the public eye. I mean, Venus Williams, Serena Williams is on record back in the day making it very clear the difference between men and women. She would not want to play against the men, and she would not want to play men's tennis, and how Andy Murray, a top player at the time, would beat her 6-love. That's 6-0 for those of you that are not tennis people, just like nil is a soccer thing. I don't know. America just sticks to 0. But anyway, and she made that very clear. Then there was later on where, there were some grumblings, and her and Venus back to back played a guy. I can't even remember his name because he was nobody. I mean, he was ranked like 200 and some on the men's tour at that time. I think he was even out partying the night before, and he beat him like 6-1, 6-1. Absolutely smoked two of the best tennis players to ever play the game. Okay. There is a dramatic difference.
We got to stop this. We got to stop acting like somebody that's speaking up on behalf of girls, like a Sophie Cunningham, like a Riley Gaines, are scourges of the earth. You are Cheryl Reeve, the head coach of the Minnesota Lynx. That is an irresponsible thing to do. You are a coach for a female basketball team. Do you not think that the females are being screwed over if they have to compete against a individual born as a male?
Cheryl Reeve is such a typical hardcore, unthinking, everything is victimhood and activism. I'm not sure she does know that there is a difference. That may be a big part of the problem. I also want to touch on because he kind of mentioned it there because I think this is really important, it is such a shame that we can in this I was gonna say country, but world really at this point we can't have good faith discussions on pretty much anything now because it's always framed with via hate, right? As Stephen A said at the beginning of this, it's not about hating anyone. It's about being for something, supporting something, not hating, being pro, not anti. Sophie Cunningham didn't say anything that was hateful toward anyone. She made what just a few years ago was a common sense thing where everyone would have nodded their head and been like, yeah, women should play women's sports and men should not. And no one would have even thought to argue against that. But then we got a very vocal, sort of unhinged minority. Because here's the thing that you don't know because media amplifies it and social media amplifies it. And you've got idiots like Cheryl Reeve and you've got morons like Megan Rapinoe who are no longer playing and would not have played had men played, but now she's advocating for men to replace women. I will never personally understand such a hateful mindset, the self loathing, the self hatred that must be involved to be someone like Megan Rapinoe and be out there advocating for men to replace women in women's sports. I can't wrap my brain around it.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? You trying to tell me that a college player for the men's at a college program anywhere in the country or an NBA player should transition to being a woman and be allowed to compete in the WNBA? Or on a collegiate level to a women's college program? Whether it's UConn, South Carolina, Iowa, Tennessee, or wherever else you want to come up with. What the hell are you talking about?
To that point, because he mentioned Riley Gaines, and it's weird and it's a shame that a lot of people have connected Riley Gaines with this blowing up because then they look at Riley Gaines from a political lens and they put her in a box and oh she's hateful and she's this and she's that, and I really personally don't even know much about Riley Gaines other than this particular issue with the swimmer, but it was an issue before Riley Gaines, right? This was going on with the swimmer, what's his name, Thomas, long before Riley Gaines. This was a dude who, by the way, did nothing other than say, I'm a woman now, while still keeping his girlfriend, by the way, and being in the locker room completely unchanged from a biological male. He was ranked, I forget now, I've seen different things, 4 something, 5 something, but he was ranked basically just about dead last in NCAA men's swimming before he started swimming on the women's side, where at least at one point, I know in that one race, he tied Riley Gaines for 5th, but that wasn't the only thing he raced in. But I believe he was ranked number 1. It's a dramatic difference, folks. By the way, just as someone involved in training athletes and this and that, I looked at one time, and because it's a great indicator of athleticism. For those of you that don't know, the vertical jump is one of the greatest in one. Like, obviously, there are other factors, but if you're going to limit it to one, it may be the most connected measure of athleticism is your vertical jump. You know who's got some of the best vertical jumps in the world because they're explosive athletes is 100-meter race runners, sprinters. And I looked, I think this was even like a couple years ago because it was something I was reading for training at the time. And this is just official race times, right? So that doesn't involve a whole lot of other people that could probably do this too. And it was something like in eight, nine, 10,000 men in official races with official race times had a better time than the women's world record. It was something like last year over 1,000 boys high school track athletes beat the women's world record. I'm sorry if this hurts feelings. As someone who is a huge supporter of women's sports, I certainly don't mean it in that way. I'm actually saying this to protect you and women's sports, to point out that there is a dramatic difference. And no, men and boys should not be competing. And this is disgusting. Cheryl Reeve, as Stephen A. Smith says here, a coach of a women's team in a women's league, advocating for replacing women with men. And what's insane is, for the most part, the women doing this are the same women that are constantly going to scream oppression from the patriarchy. Make it make sense.
It's not true. It is false. AJ DeBonza, not to throw his name out there, Darren Peterson, hell, pick a scrub. If you're a male,
I'm sorry, I was laughing because I just got to say he paused it. He said pick a scrub. I was waiting for him to name somebody. I'm like, oh my god, who's he gonna name? Who's gonna get tossed under when he says pick a scrub? Wow.
and transition into female, you should be playing against the women. Nobody said you can't transition from male to female. The issue here is competing against the women. That's what Sophie Cunningham was talking about. That's what Riley Gaines is talking about. How are you, Coach Cheryl Reeve, and you could condone that?
To that point, I'd like to point out, because I see this a lot too, and I saw someone just did the other, and that's why language is so important, right? Where they was this on X? I think it was a social media post. Maybe it was an article, but with a headline that basically said, 29 states ban trans from competing in sports. Complete and total lie. Complete and total lie. You just have to compete with who you are biologically. What it was banning, of course, is men competing in women's sports. And I say it like that because another thing, side note, but kind of relevant, because I've seen this a lot now. People think it's a gotcha, saying, "Oh, Sophie Cunningham played, on the football team in high school. Oh, isn't that interesting?" As if she's some sort of hypocrite with what she said. For the most part, and let me know in the comments below. I'm sure some of you can find examples where it's not true. At least at men's sports, boys' sports, if you want to call high school boys, for the most part, are open. Right? If the girl is good enough, they can play. That's why it cracks me up when these modern women get all uppity. I'm kidding, but you know what I mean, with the MNBA, as if that's some sort of derogatory slur against the National Basketball Association. In other words, they're trying to tell you that WNBA is some sort of insult, but it's not the MNBA, because if a woman is good enough, they very well can go play. I believe Nancy Lieberman actually had a contract with correct me if I'm wrong, it's a long time since I've read about this, an NBA team briefly, at least. Maybe it was even just for training camp or something, but yeah, an NBA team had signed her. So that's kind of disingenuous. But Sophie, I think, I forget if it was a contest or something like that, but she kicked the field goal or whatever. And her high school's kicker, I think right before the playoffs or something, tore his ACL or something like that. And they went through the process of her, practicing and, physicals, whatever, everything that was entailed, and had her play. And she kicked. I believe she made a couple extra points. I don't recall if she ever even attempted a field goal, but not the same thing, folks.
And then you're going to come out with a t-shirt. No regard for the WNBA. No regard for the sponsors that may be put off by that. No regard for the bottom line that might be affected because of a position that she has taken that you know is going to be politicized because that's what you did. No regard for that whatsoever. How is that okay? How? Because your spirit and your soul told you that's the right thing to do. So bump how it affects the collective brand of the WNBA and how they may be frowned upon by half of America when you need all the support that you can get in building your product is exceptional as the league and these young ladies playing in the league have done in building the sport.
Never had to, right? That's a big part of the problem. The NBA foot the bill to the tune of millions and millions and millions of dollars every single year. Has existed in a bubble of producing a product that does not have to make any money. That is a big part of the problem you get here, or a big reason you get these problems, and why the WNBA has been all about activism instead of the product on the court. The one thing I would like to say, though, because I see this so often now, I see all these time when anyone defending Sophie or even Sophie herself, like conservative, right wing, MAGA, all these things thrown out, and Stephen A. kind of got drawn into that there with his half the country thing. This is a 90-10 issue. I'll even be generous and conservative. It's an 80-20 issue at worst in terms of people being against boys and men in women's sports versus people being for. This is not a political split. My guess is it's a higher percentage right than it is left, but I think that's because the unhinged consider themselves left, and they're not the same thing as Democrats, just to be clear. But and that's the only reason. But it's pretty much all sane people with common sense want to keep men and boys out of women's sports.
All of these years, and you just gonna come out there and wear that shirt, knowing it was going to bring attention to you, and knowing that you're going up against the Indiana Fever with Caitlin Clark, who obviously is the number one draw in the WNBA, which means cameras are rolling. It's just an accident or coincidence that that's the game you chose to wear that shirt, huh?
Sure it is, Cheryl.
This is the bullshit. It's the selfishness.
Stephen A.
It's putting yourself before the betterment of the whole.
Cheryl Reeve is a pretty low IQ malignant narcissist. That's a big problem. Look, man, again, I always try and be fair. I have excoriated, love that word, Stephen A. Smith multiple times. I've also agreed with, it's one of those things. I am not one of those people who's going to pay attention to or to follow someone or consider myself a fan of someone only because they say what I want to hear 100% of the time. I think that's absurd. And Stephen A is one of those, man. I swear it's like 50-50 with the guy. I'm like, yes, perfect. Love how you said it. Love that you're talking about it. And other times I'm like, ah. But one thing, by the way, he didn't even get into the fact that Cheryl's shirt also talked about kids, which is like a whole nother, much more controversial issue, by the way. But I wanted to finish this up because I know this is probably one of the longer videos I've done in quite a while. Is I couldn't find the video of it, but I saw this recently. Cheryl Reeve doing an interview, and she got on her soapbox about the men, right? The women's coaches, I think it was like 7 women's coaches that were fired in the WNBA in the offseason. I can't remember how many were replaced by men, but there were a number replaced by men. And of course, she got all upset and all in her feels and women, 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 and we can't have men coaching in the WNBA. But then of course she turned around and said, we need more women coaching in the NBA. How about this, Cheryl? How about you stay out of our sports? We'll stay out of yours from top to bottom. All men in men's sports, including those who cover it, all women the other way. I don't actually support that, but I mean, it seems like maybe that's what we need to do, and we'll see how well you do. But also, don't take money from the NBA. And here's the other thing she said in that. which is why I talk about her fake activism. She made a big deal also in talking about that, about elevating black women. We need more black women. We need more black women coaching in the WNBA. Okay. So she's okay with men replacing women as players in the WNBA. She doesn't want men replacing coaches in the WNBA. And what is she? Oh, she's a coach. Don't replace her with a man, but you can replace her players with men. And then, of course, the final nail in the coffin, so to speak, more black women coaches. And yet, I'm guessing we're never going to see Cheryl Reeve step down. Cheryl Reeve resigned from her position so that a black woman can get a chance as a head coach. Right. Same thing with Paige Beckers, right? She's always talking about elevating black women and more opportunities, and she specifically have talked about endorsements and blah blah woof woof. I don't see Paige Beckers turning away any of those checks. I don't see Paige Beckers saying, "Hey, yeah, you want me to endorse your product? That's cool, but you know what? Here's what you got to bring my friend here, the one with more of a tan, and I want you to give her 75% of the money that you would give me. I'll take 25% and still do all that work." You don't see Paige Beckers doing that. You don't see Cheryl, because that's what I mean about fake activism. They will yell and scream and complain and get on the soapbox and virtue signal to pat themselves on the back, but they will never, ever, ever let it affect them personally in a negative way. They're all for it as long as they're not impacted. That's fake. That means I have zero reason to listen to you because you're fake, because you are not willing to sacrifice anything yourself. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like, comment, subscribe. Y'all know the drill. I will talk to you later.